simply means the expansion of a business. So the business has expanded. That's what growth is. So what are the problems a business might have when it starts growing? So that takes us to the problems arising from growth. The problem is about diseconomies of scale. And what is diseconomies of scale? It occurs if a business expands its scale of operation more than the minimum efficiency. So there's always going to be the optimum level you can reach as a business. Going further than that, you're going to start witnessing a rise in your average cost of production. So this graph will explain further what diseconomies of scale is about. This is our average cost of production. So it started from here because the output is less. But as soon as the firm increases its output, it is expected that the average cost of production starts falling. It starts falling until it gets to the optimum level. At this point, to this point, the firm must not exceed it, because if it does, its average cost of production starts increasing. It's going back to how it started before now. I think you get the point here. So economies of scale is this, but the point we're going is at this point where we have these economies of scale. So these economies of scale occurs when the firm becomes too big to be controlled. That is the economies of scale. So what are the causes of these economies of scale? It's just the same as the example here. At a given level of output, when the output is 0, the cost is increasing. As soon as the output increases to 2, the cost starts falling. To 4, it starts falling. Up to 6. Until 6, the average cost of production fell to 10. So that means the firm is doing well. But anything exceeding this point brings about an increase in the cost of production back to where it begins. So this is called diseconomies of scale. You must not exceed this optimum level. If you do as a business, then you should be expecting a high cost of production. So that is what diseconomies of scale is about. So what are the sources of diseconomies of scale? We have two sources of diseconomies of scale. We have internal and external. So I'm going to read anyway. There are different reasons. The reasons in the long run average cost might rise as output is pushed above the minimum efficiency scale. The minimum efficiency scale is this. Any point above this brings about diseconomies of scale. So they fall into two groups, namely internal and external. So we start with internal diseconomies of scale. Why do we call it internal diseconomies of scale? We call it internal diseconomies of scale because this cost arises as a result of excessive growth in the business. So I wrote, internal diseconomies of scale, these are the rising costs caused by excessive growth in the business. So if the business becomes too big to be controlled, that is what we call diseconomies of scale. So what are the causes of internal diseconomies of scale? Because internal diseconomies of scale happens inside the business. So what are the reasons why we could have internal diseconomies of scale? Number one, poor communication. Many large firms suffer from poor communication as the flow of information between employees, department, division, or between head office and subsidiaries become difficult to manage. There's always communication, which is the encoding and decoding of information. If information doesn't get to the right person or the right department at the right time, so whatever instruction that has to be passed will not be able to be passed. And that means the instruction will not be efficient. So we won't be able to carry out that instruction because we got it late or few. So that is about poor communication. So if information doesn't flow the way it should flow, because certain firm has become too big or too large to pass information accurately or accordingly, then the firm is suffering from that. And if the firm suffers for that, that is diseconomies of scale. The second point is control and coordination. For control and coordination, I wrote, the control and coordination of large businesses is also demanding. They have thousands of employees, large amounts of resources, and many different operational locations, which means added responsibility and supervision. So the point is, the business has become too big that it has thousands of employees. How do you monitor these employees? Before now you were hundreds, and now you have thousands of employees. It means two things. It means you need more supervisors and added responsibility. And if this thing is not managed well, then there will be diseconomies of scale. If you are unable to manage your resources, if you are unable to manage your department, if you are unable to coordinate them to work efficiently, it will bring about diseconomies of scale. The third point, poor worker motivation. This point is you having, this is your company. You have You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 workers. Now you become too big that you have countless of workers. you have countless of workers. When it was this, individuals are important to the company because they are few. You know them, they know you. They are important to the company. But when they become this, we don't see the individual, we see the numbers. So here, individual workers become a minor part of the group. Here, they are a major part because they are few. So when you have few workers working, they are major. So you know them, they know you. But when it becomes too big like this, so those individuals, they see themselves, but the company doesn't see them. So they become demotivated. They feel they are remote to the organization, that they are not important to the organization. As a result of that, they might be demotivated. And if they are demotivated, then it brings about inefficiency. So because they are demotivated, they are not going to produce as they used to produce. But you have to still pay them as you used to pay them. So it becomes a cost on the business. Do you get the point here? Here, it is difficult to figure out an individual in the workforce. Here, it is easier to figure out individuals in the workforce. So the difference between this and this is the growth. Here, the individuals start feeling remote to the organization. Here, the individual feels an integral part of the organization. So if this happens, then the individual is looking for itself within the organization. Then he or she becomes demotivated. And because he or she is demotivated, productivity on his own side or her own side would fall into increase the average cost of production. That is about poor worker motivation. Is it clear? The next one, technical diseconomies of scale. When we talk about technical diseconomies of scale, we're talking about the use of equipment and machinery. When we use equipment, there's always going to be an optimum level of usage. You cannot push the equipment more than its capacity. When you start pushing the equipment or the machinery more than its capacity because you want to expand or because you have to increase your output, it's going to get to a stage that it becomes inefficient. You start spending money, your cost of maintenance will start increasing. The machine will break down because you have pushed it more than its capacity. So if this happens, it is technical diseconomies of scale. Is it clear? Is it clear, please? The last one, bureaucracy. When I talk about bureaucracy, it's simply talking about the business becoming too big that it spends a lot of resources, a lot of time on administration. So when you spend a lot of resources and a lot of time on administration, it brings about internal diseconomies of scale. And the last one is external diseconomies of scale. For external diseconomies of scale, it's simply talking about the industry becoming too big. For external diseconomies of scale here, it's talking about the industry becoming too big that it starts affecting firms in that industry. Just please sit down. For external diseconomies of scale, it simply means the industry itself, like the educational industry, becomes too big that it starts affecting firms, individual firms in that industry. So I'm going to read. For external diseconomies of scale. External, yeah. This occurs when an industry grow too big. Rapid growth in an industry might raise the price of production factors sharply. So because the industry becomes too big, the factors of production, which are the resources that are used in the cost of producing goods and services in that industry, the prices might increase. Land price will increase, labor price will increase, capital price will increase. How? Because the industry has become too big. The industry needs supplies. The industry needs factors of production. So what we are saying in essence is this. Let's take example, the educational industry is becoming too big because we have so much schools. Yes or no? Because we have so much schools, buildings for schools, people will start increasing the prices for lands for those who want to build their schools. People will start increasing the rent fee for those who want to use it for school, isn't it? So that increases their cost of production. So the land needed for schools, the price will increase. Because all individuals or entrepreneurs who need the land to build for schools have to fight for it. So the price increases for land. Do you understand land here? So it becomes expensive because most firms need it to build their factory or their school. Labor, it becomes expensive as the demand for skilled labor in such industry will increase as firms will compete for the best. The educational industry, the amount they have to pay to teachers will increase because each school needs skilled teachers. Do you get the point here? The industry is becoming bigger, so they know that they need teachers to compete with the rest. So that means they have to, the demand for skilled teachers would increase. And there are not much skilled teachers. So for you to get the skilled one, you have to pay more. So that is external diseconomies of scale. We need more teachers because the education industry is becoming bigger. We have a lot of schools. And the only thing that makes those schools different from others are the teachers in there. So that means they need skilled workers, they need skilled labor. To get that, you have to pay more. So that means they have to just for teachers. Then capital. The cost of equipment and machinery will increase as demand may exceed supply. Because there are a lot of schools now. Equipment in there like tables, chairs for schools, smart boards, all these things, their prices will increase. Because the demand might be more than the supply. Increase. Price of tables, chairs, smart boards, they will increase. Markers, inks, they will increase. Because a lot of schools will need them for their schools. So these are what we call external diseconomies of scale. For external diseconomies of scale, it happens because the firm becomes too big that the resources are not enough in that industry. Land becomes expensive, labor becomes expensive, capital becomes expensive. If this happens in that industry, it is external diseconomies of scale. But for internal diseconomies of scale, we're talking about the growth that occurs within the industry, within the firm itself. And what are the problems about internal diseconomies of scale? We have poor communication, we have lack of coordination, we have poor worker motivation, which the individual becomes a minor part of the workforce. Here, this is minor parts, integral parts of the workforce. So if workers are integral part of the workforce, they are motivated. This will bring about motivation. This will bring about demotivation. And demotivation will bring about diseconomies of scale. Is it clear? Is it clear, please? So we stop that, we stop for here.